Just this morning, within the last few minutes, Hoda, he has taken the lead in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania being a checkmate state, so to speak. If he wins it,
we're talking about 5,500. Yeah, 5,500. That's the gap that we have right now. Chuck Todd, take us to it.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, we expect another 20,000 mail-in ballots out of Philadelphia. And again, the former vice president has been winning those at a greater than 80% clip. I mean, what was extraordinary here is that 31,000 ballots. He had a deficit at 31,000 ballots, and Joe Biden netted out of 31,000, netted more than 25,000 votes. So just shows you at how of a clip he is winning, not just Philadelphia, but these vote by mail ballots in Philadelphia. So there's another 20. You heard Stephanie Goss say there may be another 100,000 outside of Philadelphia. But the math is just in the former vice president's favor here. He's winning all of these vote by mail ballots by some advantage. The ones in southeast Pennsylvania, 75, 80, 85% clip. But even in some of these red counties and certainly out of Pittsburgh, he's been winning them at a higher rate than the election did.
Chuck, can we go back big picture here for folks at 610 out west? Some people probably haven't had their first cup of coffee, so let's
right. Two things happened to them.
Why? Yes, exactly. So, but let's explain why Pennsylvania is so consequential when you look at the president's path to 270 and Joe Biden's path to 270.
Well, let's just show you here. We're at 253, 214 of called races here, and look. Wisconsin is a apparent winner. It is technically within the recount margin. It is when it gets certified. You can't ask for a recount until, as you keep pointing out, it's actually the returns are unofficial returns before certification. So that does include that. But as you can see here, you called it a checkmate state. This is it. So the president here can carry North Carolina. Let's say the vote they find the typo that gives him Georgia. Let's say he catches here. Let's say something magical happens to him in Clark County. It doesn't work without Pennsylvania. Yeah. Unfortunately, also for the president, though, this Nevada doesn't. It's going to be tight, but the math doesn't work in his favor. Arizona, I'm not going to characterize. I think it's going to get tighter and tighter. But at this point, Georgia, frankly, you'd rather be Joe Biden. In fact, he took the lead overnight when more ballots came in. There's not a lot to count, but I want to take you and show you where the majority of votes that are left in Georgia, what county they're in. It's Gwinnett County, which is a county that Joe Biden was winning by almost 20 points, and these are going to be vote by mail votes, so he's going to probably win it at a greater clip.
We're also waiting
for
military and overseas ballots. They have until today to come in Georgia.
There could be as many as 8,000. The projection is probably be about 3,000. And here's the thing, don't even try to characterize it. I know some people say, oh, the military ballots, they'll lean Republican. It's been the military, the rank and file military, the surveys that were done by Stars and Stripes, the newspaper of the military, showed they were as divided as the country is.
Yeah. Everybody wants to read the tea leaves, but it's vote counting.
You know what? Don't read the tea leaves. We're counting the leaves.
Yes.
Okay.
Should we find out what's going on in Biden country? That's where Kristen Welker is at Joe Biden's headquarters in Delaware. Hey, Kristen.
Hey, Hoda and Savannah. Well, just working my sources, this advisor says they are thrilled. Campaign staff are elated and confident. And look, this fits in line with what they have been anticipating would happen. We've been talking to them over the past 48 hours or so, and they have expressed increased confidence that Biden would ultimately pull ahead in Pennsylvania. And they said Georgia's going to be very tight, and so it is. And yet, clearly, they are emboldened by the fact that Biden is now leading in that state. They've also expressed confidence about their chances in Nevada as well as Arizona. And of course, we heard from the former vice president yesterday speaking here in Wilmington, Delaware. He said that he and Senator Harris feel very confident that once all of the votes are counted, that they will ultimately prevail in this race. And he, of course, struck a very different tone than we heard from President Trump, who was raising questions about the legitimacy of this count process. Vice President Biden saying, look, we need to stay calm. He urged patience, and he said every vote vote needs to be counted. Let me just set the scene here for you, though. In Wilmington, I'm standing in front of the stage where Biden spoke on Tuesday in the overnight hours after the official election day, and I can tell you there have been signs of life in and around this stage behind me. There have been mic checks going on, people here making sure that the lights work, that the stage is set, and so I think that it's safe to say the Biden camp is projecting an air of confidence and signaling that we might yet hear from Vice President Biden again soon at some point today or within the coming hours. So a very active scene here outside the Biden campaign headquarters as we continue to get reaction to the latest developments and the vote count. Right. Savannah and Hoda.
Kristen, thank you. If you're just tuning in, catching up, we have not called Pennsylvania for Joe Biden, but he has taken the lead this morning, and there are still votes to be counted.
Yeah, let's turn now to Peter Alexander's at the White House. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Hoda and Savannah. So we are here at the White House waiting to hear any word from here. His fierce comments yesterday in defiance of all the facts that we're witnessing right now, saying it effectively, to use his word, disappearing lead. But to be clear, there is a way to adjudicate that, the legal process, instead of making these claims without any evidence. And even some of the president's allies, Chris Christie among them, have said there is no basis for the claims the president's been making about what's widespread voter fraud as the president claims here. So at this point, we're waiting to see what, if anything, we'll hear from the president or from the campaign. The president's campaign advisors in recent days had been holding calls with reporters, sort of mapping out their strategy and their thinking. Biden would have been declared president. Then the president said, stop the fraud. So it's been very erratic, the messaging here. And recognize that even as the president attacks these mail-in ballots that are being his own aides and advisors, was telling his voters not to vote by mail, to do it in person. They feared that might suppress their own vote. It's possible that that had some impact. None of what we're seeing now is out of the blue. We've been telling you for weeks that this is likely what would take place, not who would win or who would lose, but that the early vote would favor Joe Biden most likely, as Democrats, for whatever reason, were more inclined to vote right now. As one of the other frustrations is that in terms of the legal team, there's been frustration that there is not some legal marshal, as allies of the president describe it right now, like a James Baker type, as one said it, who, of course, led George W. Bush's recount battle back in 2000. This time around, one aide saying to me, you have Corey Lewandowski, the president's former campaign manager, and Rudy Giuliani on a street corner in Philadelphia. That's not going to cut it. Savannah and Hoda.
All right, Peter, thank you. Keep us posted. Joining us now, John Fetterman, the Democratic Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, good morning to you. I think the first question is, how many more votes, to your knowledge, does Pennsylvania have to count, and when might we see them?
Give or take, it's around 115 to 120,000, I would imagine, and they're going to continue to count them. And I am unaware, and would pretty much all but guarantee, that there is not one county or area of Pennsylvania Vice President Biden increases lead throughout as the reports come in.
You know, if you are a fan of the president, you're watching this razor-thin margin, and you may be saying, well, the president's talking about all this fraud that's going on. What's your take on that?
My take on that is that we wouldn't be arguing whether 1 + 1 = 3. We would dismiss it out of hand because we know that's not true. At what point does yelling about voter fraud, in the complete utter absence of any evidence, become yelling fire in a crowded theater? There is no basis for any claims of voter fraud. And the president has marginalized himself as no more than a troll, saying outlandish things that has no basis in reality. Math is coming. Math arrived in a big dose as Joe Biden went ahead just now. We're going to see that bank. And there's nothing behind that other than math.
You obviously are not a fan of the president or a member of his party. There is a lawsuit in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Oh, I just want to make sure people. Yes, of course. I just want to make sure people understand where you're coming from. Yep.
I'm a fan of math. You know, and math doesn't respond well to opinion. You know, it's math, and that's what we're going to be looking at in Pennsylvania throughout the day.
Right. Okay. You're counting mail-in votes. You got about 100,000 left. That we know the mail-in votes have favored Joe Biden because that was his campaign strategy, telling his voters, mail your vote. The president's campaign strategy was show up in person. All those in-person votes have been counted. Now they're counting the mail-in votes, and that's why we've seen things develop this way in Pennsylvania. I do want to ask you, Lieutenant Governor, about this lawsuit that is on hold for the moment, having to do with this decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that ballots that were sent before Election Day, they have to be sent before Election Day, but arrived up to today, 3 days later, I'm calling them the Tuesday to Friday ballots, that they could be counted. Now, local officials had decided to segregate those ballots, and to my understanding, and I'm hoping you can confirm this, are those segregated ballots, the ones that are potentially controversial, have they been counted and added into this total yet, to your knowledge?
They haven't. And let me be clear, I don't think those ballots are even going to be an issue. I think that the number of outstanding ballots, and I want to be clear, the ballots that are being counted right now are the ones that were received on or before Election Day by 8 o'clock. So those aren't subject to any lawsuits. You know, the president can sue a ham sandwich. He can send 1,000 lawyers to Pennsylvania, but it's not going to change the basic fact of the matter is that every one of these ballots that's in play right now that's going to be counted today throughout the rest of the day has been lawfully received and going to be counted, and they're all going to skew in Joe Biden's favor. You've seen it happen, and it's going to continue to happen.
Lieutenant Governor, when are we going to know for sure what the count is in Florida? Do you think you'll know by the end of the day?
In Pennsylvania?
I mean, Pennsylvania, sorry.
We're all on deadlines, not much sleep.
Yeah, I can't specify an exact time, but I mean, as Mr. Todd was just indicating, it's like, you know, like I said, math doesn't care what your feelings are. Math is going to lead it to the truth. And the truth is that I am not aware of one single county where the mail-in ballots did not skew in the vice president's behavior by a factor of 60-40 all the way up to and approaching 90-10. And it's unlikely we're going to see that at this point going forward. So I think you're going to see the vice president's lead expand, and I would see it maybe expand it to maybe 75, you know, or low six figures at this point.
All right. Pennsylvania's Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, thanks for joining us on a busy day. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Et dès la nuit électorale, Donald Trump menaçait de faire intervenir la Cour suprême. De nombreuses actions judiciaires ont déjà été enclenchées par ses avocats, notamment des demandes de recomptage dans le Wisconsin.
You know, we could have been stuck doing this in the state of Florida too, had we only counted essentially Republican votes first, then eventually put us where we counted Election Day votes first, and then we counted the vote by mail. So then it gives this impression as people are following, what's going on? I thought the president was leading. And then, you know, when we do these after action reports, the president clearly discouraged his voters from doing vote by mail. And that's why we're seeing this skew that we're seeing. He got a good turnout on Election Day. I don't think he lost votes here, but in some ways, this was the strategy he pursued. The Democrats pursued a strategy of bank your votes earlier, worried about what the pandemic would do, and here we are. But I will say this, you know, this perception of agita that's out there that somehow, they're taking it away from the president or this, and it's like, it's all because of how we counted these ballots in Pennsylvania.
Decisions. So in Pennsylvania, it was the Republican legislature that said, you're going to count the in-person first. You can't even open those mail ballots until 7 or 8 o'clock on Tuesday night of election night. So that's how it is in Pennsylvania. In Florida, Casey, you've got a Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, and the legislature there. They decided, no, all right, let's do it the opposite way. We're going to do mail first, and then we're going to do in person. And you saw that it developed a different way. It looked good for Biden at first, and then ultimately Trump won and won big in Florida.
Yeah, no, that's right. And you know, we one of the things that people worry about when they're making these decisions is you don't want to skew what people are thinking when they walk into the voting booth. So everyone wants to make sure that if you're counting mail-in ballots before Election Day, that count stays a secret. So that's part of how they think about these decisions. But you know, the reality is here, and I hope that the takeaway is for everyone, that counting all of the ballots and encouraging people to vote, no matter how, is the way to go. Because to Chuck's point about these vote-by-mail ballots, I mean, the president got enormous turnout. I mean, he you know, if he does in fact lose this election, he'll lose it with a lot more votes than he got in 2016. So that means Republicans turned out in higher numbers. But he was out there discouraging people to vote by mail, saying that's not safe, it's potentially fraudulent, raising questions about that. And it is possible that that hurt him. We'll never know, really, that reality. But, you know, I hope that one of the takeaways that we have from this election, and, you know, there have been some assumptions in the past that if more people vote, it's going to benefit Democrats. And there are sometimes legislatures or you know, other bodies or politicians who make decisions about that, right? And they say, oh well, I'm going to perceive, and you see it in some of these lawsuits, that if we win this lawsuit that will count fewer ballots, it will be better off for my political party. I hope that we can just be done with that.
Yeah. They legislate based on their own confirmation bias, the conventional wisdom that turned out to be wrong. In fact, our own pollster, Bill McIntyre, was ranting about this when we were talking about turnout. He said, look, you know, we had an idea up to a certain number, but there's a point where so many people vote that you have to throw out sort of assumptions. In low turnouts, the patterns matter a lot. The higher the turnout, you have to throw out historical context. We've never had an election like this where so many people participated, and so many people participated in different ways.
And Republicans in Texas have said they made a mistake. They assumed all the new voters would be Democrats, and they weren't.
Let's get to some more numbers, because I know everyone's probably waking up on the West Coast going, what is happening? We got another battleground that flipped in Joe Biden's favor. We're talking about Georgia. Biden leading there, slim margin. We've got Blaine Alexander in Atlanta for us. Hey, Blaine.
Hey, Hoda. So we've just got some new updated numbers from the Secretary of State's office. I want to run through those for you. The first is a number that we've been watching, quite frankly, since election night, and that's the number of votes still outstanding. So we know that as 97 outstanding votes still in the state of Georgia. Now, that's across 5 different counties here in the city, or in the state, rather. But the biggest share comes from Gwinnett County. Now, we're watching that very closely, not just when these votes come in, but where they're coming from, because that gives us a good sense of where those counties stand so far and what we could possibly expect. So we know that the lion's share of those, more than half, about 4,800 of those votes, are going to come from Gwinnett County. Now, that's a county that Joe Biden is already leading by about 58%. It's a metro Atlanta suburb. Another number of them are coming from Cobb County, another metro Atlanta suburb. But of the 3 remaining counties, those are all places where President Trump currently has a lead. So we're talking about 5 counties still left to report their votes. Of 2 of them are blue, 3 of them are red right now. So that just kind of lets you know that already that's kind of split as to which way those votes will possibly go. Now, in addition to that load, we're also looking to see ballots coming in possibly from military and overseas ballots. Now, the Secretary of State says that there could be as many as, we'll likely not get this many, but as many as 8,900 ballots that could possibly come in. As long as they're postmarked by Tuesday, they can be counted if they're received by today. But you heard Chuck Todd earlier say that likely projections is that we'll get far fewer than those that actually come in. So that's the second batch of numbers that we're watching right now. Now, we saw Joe Biden take that narrow lead overnight, and that was thanks in large part to Clayton County. That's one of the counties right here in metro Atlanta, just to the south, a heavily Democratic area. They uploaded some more votes overnight, reported some more votes overnight, and that's what allowed Joe Biden to shift into that very narrow lead. Now, one bit of context I have to give you guys is that even though Georgia is still not finished tabulating all of of the votes, the current votes, the first count, we're already very strongly in recount territory. That's because state law says that if candidates come within 0.5% of each other, that means that a candidate can request a recount. Well, as of right now, they're at the same percentage. So it's already very clear. In fact, the Secretary of State's office has essentially acknowledged as much, that Georgia will almost certainly go into a recount for these numbers so far, guys.
All right, if anyone wondered if their vote mattered, all you have to do is look at these razor-thin margins and realize they definitely do. All right, Blaine, thanks.
All right, so it is 9:30 in the East, 6:30 in the West. This is an NBC News special report. We're on the air because in Pennsylvania, the perennial battleground and checkmate state for both candidates, Joe Biden has taken the lead this morning. We were told there's about 115,000 votes still left to be counted in Pennsylvania. That brings us to John Lipinski. He's the director of elections for NBC News and the person who helps to make these decisions about when the network can call a race for any given candidate. We are not doing that yet, John. Right now, we have said that Joe Biden is taking the lead. That's the results we've gotten from Pennsylvania.